have already been sponsored by my good friend Larry Pittman. And I want you to keep an eye on him, as well as Michael Speciale. Those are two strong Second Amendment supporters, right to keep and bear arms supporters, that are in the General Assembly now. Now, these bills will help expand and take care of the issues that we didn't deal with in House Bill 650. But I want everyone here to pay close attention, to keep an eye on what's going on. You see, we have Republican supermajorities in the House, in the Senate, and a Republican governor. You would think, right off the top of your head, that this should be a no-brainer. We're going to expand our right to keep and bear arms. Unfortunately, some of the enemies to the right to bear arms are in our own party, in the leadership of our own party. And that's something that we have to pay attention to. We have to stay on them. We have to hold their feet to the fire and let them know that we absolutely care about the right to bear arms. Now, let's get some background here. As you know, if you look at the United States Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Second Amendment, it says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. There's no caveats. There's no questions. That means the federal government does not even have a right to regulate firearms at all. None. When we talk about common sense regulation, let's not talk about keeping the status quo. There's too many conservatives nowadays that want to conserve the status quo instead of going back to the Constitution that made America free. And that's absolutely critical. We have to go back to the right to bear arms. We have to get rid of the regulation at the federal level. And even at the state level, the Constitution only allows the General Assembly to regulate concealed carry. Something I may disagree with, but that's in the state constitution. The state constitution does not allow you to regulate open carry or the regular right to keep and bear arms. So they're not allowed to regulate your gun rights at the state level or at the federal level, and yet they do. Common sense gun regulation. We have to, keep the people safe, the children safe. They're safer with an armed society, and that's absolutely true. Now, as we go forward, I'm glad to see so many people out here today. This really does my heart good to see so many people absolutely concerned about the right to keep and bear arms. The more you pay attention, the more you get involved, and the more you press your elected representatives, the more they're going to pay attention to you. Now, I want to set some of your minds at ease. I don't want to have you drop out or think it's not as important. I do not see gun confiscations happening. I don't see it happening by executive order. I don't see it happening by bill. First of all, they won't be able to pass it through Congress. I believe that the White House is stirring that pot on purpose to build up all this fear about what's going to happen. And then as soon as we're distracted and looking somewhere else, somewhere in the dead of the night, midnight, when no one's paying attention, they're going to pass some lesser bill, such as the original Clinton assault weapons ban, and hope everyone just breathes a sigh of relief and moves on. Well, we can't let that happen. We have to stay engaged. So, last session we had some amazing progress with House Bill 650 to expand our gun rights. We have real castle doctrine. This year we have House Bill 17 for restaurant carry and House Bill 49 so far for carry in your vehicle. But we have a lot more to do because the federal government is getting bigger every year. And while they don't have the power or the ability to do anything major right now, we don't know what's going to happen 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 10 years from now. I suspect 2014 is going to be a very good Republican year, if for no other reason than people are scared. And that's a big thing. So what we're really looking at is what we're going to do in the future to make sure that this never happens again. That's important for all of us, citizens of the United States and of the great state of North Carolina, to live in fear. To think that Washington's going to come take our weapons or ban our weapons or do whatever, that's not right. We're Americans. We're supposed to be free. Just because we can't see the bars on our cage doesn't mean that we're free. We're locked behind all these regulations, and they're trying to take them tighter. And I believe that we as a state can move forward to protect those rights right now. The United States Constitution has Article 6, the Supremacy Clause, which specifies that only those laws pursuant to the U.S. Constitution are valid in the United States of America. Now that's important. What we have to realize is about 95% of the laws on the books of the federal government do not pursue from the Constitution. The vast majority of everything that goes on at the federal government is broken and unconstitutional. And if we're conservatives, we're not trying to conserve that status quo. We're trying to conserve the Constitution from which they've already fled. Now, part of the Constitution is the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment is a big deal here in North Carolina because our elected leadership is scared to death of it. They say that question was answered in the Civil War. They talk about Wicker v. Filburn, and they talk about Supreme Court cases. How many here think the Supreme Court's usually right?
No, rarely.
So if the Supreme Court says that we have to go kill our firstborn son, are we going to do it?
No.
That's the way our elected officials act. If the Supreme Court says it, it's the word of God. That's not the way the Constitution was written. The Constitution was written with the individual people as sovereign. Not the state, not the federal, the person. You, me. We're the sovereigns. We delegate some of our authority to the states to do the things that we cannot do by ourselves. And then the states delegate some of their authority to the federal government to handle things like federal defense or the 19 enumerated powers in the U.S. Constitution. Anything beyond that is illegitimate. Today, we've turned that entire power pyramid upside down. We have the federal government on top telling the states what to do, the states in the middle telling us what to do. So when we talk about we can't go back to the way it was, we're trying to preserve the status quo while the left is trying to take us further to the left, we're having the wrong debate. America is in trouble, and unless we restore the constitutional order, America's headed for a lot more trouble. We have the potential that we could go the way of the Soviet Union. Our country could die in this generation unless we stand up, wake up, and get involved. Just because they're not going to come around with goon squads and confiscate our weapons tomorrow doesn't mean that we go home and think it's all gone away. This didn't start 4 years ago. This didn't start 12 years ago. This didn't even start in 1913, but that's when it really got kicked off. This has been going on for a very, very long time. And because you're paying attention, because we have issues that really mean a lot to us, like the right to keep and bear arms, and we see a threat from Washington, D.C., we're here today, we're getting active. I want you to stay active. I want you to keep pushing for your right to keep and bear arms, for your constitutional right, and for the federal government to be right-sized and locked under the Constitution again. Because if we go back to a constitutional government, that's when America becomes free, and that's when America becomes prosperous. Now, many of you may have heard of me from last session. I was one of the most prolific 10th Amendment House representatives in the entire country. And this is in the state that is the most frightened of the 10th Amendment of all 50 states in the Union. So it's a tough position to be in. But you know what? We have to stand. If I were to go along, to get along, I'd still be in the House today. I'd probably have a wonderful career ahead of me. But you know what? The country would die. Is that really the kind of trade we want to make? When it's hard to stand, that's when we need to stand the most. When things get difficult, we can't cower away and hide off in a corner. We have to stand up and get in their faces and let them know that we are Americans, we are free, and we will have our will in the United States. We have to stop automatically assuming that our representative is a good one just because he's a Republican. We have to stop automatically assuming that someone's got our back when we don't get involved. If we don't tell them, they're not going to hear it. We're here to preserve the right to bear arms. We have a lot of hope from what happened last session. We have a lot of hope with what's going on this session, but we still have obstacles to overcome, including the leadership of our own party. But we can do it. We can do it because you're here on a weekday when it's hard to be here. We can do it because you're engaged and active and you care about this issue. And we have to stop accepting the argument that the government has the right to regulate our right to keep and bear arms. The right to keep and bear arms was originally intended as a hedge against tyranny. The people of the United States are supposed to be more well-armed than our government. And that's not because we hate our government. That's to keep our government behaving in the way that made America great in the first place.
That's right.
And when we have the completely free right to keep and bear arms, when we have something like a constitutional militia, guess what? No country on the planet can harm us. No country, all the countries together couldn't harm us. Just like Admiral Yamamoto said, we can't invade the mainland. Behind every blade of grass there'll be a rifle. That's where we need to go again. Now, we can start by changing the leadership in our party to be more responsive to the conservative grassroots. The rank and file members of the Republican Party are, I believe, on average, tenfold more conservative than our leadership. And that's because we don't speak out enough. We don't stand up enough. Well, I do want to let you know that we are working on changing that. As a big part of pursuing the right to keep and bear arms, I plan on running for the North Carolina Vice Chairman of the Republican Party. And I also wanted to let you know that we have a strong Second Amendment, strict constitutional conservative running for United States Senate. His name is Greg Brannon, if you've heard of him. Remember that name. He is a strong constitutionalist, one of the strongest constitutionalists you'll ever meet. And thank you all again for coming out here today, and I believe we have questions after we're done. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful